China moves on with more purchases from the United States, but the market ignores it. Jerry there is ready to assess all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had a week where the markets were really slow. I think maybe impacted by the Middle East or with a lot of uncertainty there. And they still ignored these major purchases by China for both corn and soybean.
Yes, well, they were a purchaser of soybeans, all right, a week ago or more. Uh, the U.S. Markets really kind of responded to some rain activity that moved across parts of the Midwest, and also the fact that President Trump continued to be optimistic that the Iranians were going to come to the table, talked about things progressing there. There really wasn't as much military action this last week, too. There's different ideas about what that means or doesn't mean. If he's basically uh, some basically slowing down his military actions because of lack of supplies, or if it's because the Iranians and negotiators in the U.S. are really making progress. But that all being said, there wasn't a lot of activity in the U.S. Uh, and the Iranians in the Persian Gulf. So there is not much action though through the Straits of Hormuz, which is really the most important part. Right now, there seems to be some ideas that they're going to get the Straits of Hormuz opened up, and then the whole issue is in its subtleties has been the fact that the U.S. wants to take the uranium out of Iran. Well, that's not likely to happen. So maybe the U.S. has finally figured out some other alternative versus physically moving the Iranians Iranians uranium uh, uh, stockpiles at this point. But in general, here the markets also are moving along about the U.S. crop conditions at this point. The upcoming August 12th USDA report is prompting private forecasters and trade averages coming out, and that added to some of the general ups and downs of the markets as we progress to this week. So uh, we first had a StoneX estimate come out with the average estimate 184 point I think it was 8 or 9, which would have been above the USDA's 183 number they had. And then the uh, StoneX number, excuse me, the S&P number came out from the old Informa group there, came in at 182. So had both sides of the numbers come out as we came towards the end of the week here in the trade average guesses.
Yes, and the market has not followed so much what's going on in South America, in my.
Yeah, the South American situation. There was even some pop up in information there about maybe the yields in on corn in Paranon were maybe not as good as the people were expecting, but in general, the corn estimate's still pretty adequate at this point. Uh, I think the trade ideas down in South America are over 140 million, and USDA was 138 on its last estimate, and both of them are more than adequate on things at this point for the world markets. The big question comes right now is that there's circulations going on uh, in China, in the Chinese trade, that they really uh, have more than adequate corn supplies. And the one thing that's also happening right now to accommodate the U.S. purchases by China of soybeans is that they need to move some supplies out of their stocks. They love to use soybeans from the U.S. to put in stocks, so they move things that are in stocks, and that they need to rotate those stocks as time goes on, and that and as you mentioned there, we did have a purchase last week of at least the idea was close to 1 million metric tons. We haven't got that kind of announcement made at this point, physically by the USDA, but it's moving along towards that number. And the numbers that I have on the books this week, which is actually a week behind, is that we've had over 3.5 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans sold to China, which is a lot higher than the total numbers that we uh, had been circulating up until the last month. From there, they were so their things are moving along. But the key thing is that uh, China does has, despite the fact that they've had some nasty typhoons and things like that, they have decided they've got their crop size on corn particularly is adequate at this point, and that's going to be interesting. The U.S. really needs to have China be a buyer of corn in the coming year, and it looks like they're getting plenty of it from South America, from both either Brazil or Argentina.
Yeah, so what do you think is the marketing strategy right now? I think is not a good time to sell.
Oh no, we're still back kind of hunkered down going into this USDA report on the 12th. The Interestingly enough, some of the trade average estimates that did come out Friday this week kind of mimic some of my ideas about things at this point, with the average trade guess from from Reuters was for 182.4. I'm looking at 182 on that one. That does take my production number down closer to 15.85. That's while the average estimate on production is 15.93 on corn. Interestingly enough, I'm looking for a little higher reduction in harvested numbers here. I'm looking for like 250,000 less acres being planted, while about 200,000 of that going to beans, and that's subtly situations in that. Uh, 'Cause I'm also looking at 52.5 versus the trades really 53. And I don't have a real problem with that. These are numbers that are the subtleties on things as we go along. Uh, and particularly even with the half a bushel down, I am anticipating a 200 million increase, a 200,000 acre increase in beans because of the weathers we've had, and that. The My production number is about 30 million less than the trade average guess from there. And so, looking at the ending carryover stocks, I do have a number that's uh, on corn that's well, the one thing that I think is on old crop carryover, we've got to keep that in mind, that I think the export shipments and sales have definitely been very good, and I'm not sure that we don't have a good ethanol number that's hanging in there. The update this last week was pretty solid from there. So I'm kind of looking for maybe 50 million down in old crop corn. But these are all minor adjustment situations. There's not a lot of big changes on things. The trade's looking for about a 70 million decrease in new crop carryover down to 1.725. I'm looking for a number about 1.69. So, these are adjustments along the way. Soybeans on this thing, minor adjustments since the yields are kind of in the same world. at this point. August is such a huge month for soybeans, but right now we're kind of set up in most cases here of having adequate moisture for a good yield, so I don't anticipate a big adjustments there. Uh, the wheat, this will be our final expectations on oat crop, or excuse me, the final winter wheat estimate before we get to the end of the year on September 30th on that. Uh, so I'm anticipating some small reductions both in winter wheat and spring wheat, which would tighten up the carryover stock for the coming year from 722 down to about 706. The trade's at 715. These are all slight magnitude. I think the key feature in this thing after next Wednesday will be what's going on in the Midwest and also setting up for the private forecasters in the field out there as the Pro Farmer Tour steps off on the 17th for their 4 days out there across the Midwest. I'm looking forward to our mini tour. Hopefully, we're going to have a quick tour out to Indiana and then come back on the 17th, excuse me, no, on the 15th and do our annual Central Illinois tour, which has some great comparisons on that over the years. Interestingly enough, Central Illinois has not always been the bellwether that it has been in the past with some of the erratic weather. Last year, we also had a lot of disease issues there that popped in and backed off. But overall, it's still a good examination of what we seen over the years as to what our crop size are. It's an interesting one at this point. Southern Illinois has been, which is really a little further south than we traditionally look at, hasn't had the rains. There's been parts of Iowa that northwest and west central haven't had the rains either. And that some other places have. We've had also some excessive rains that might have washed out some fertilizer in certain places. So it's going to be as always, there's great things to see out there and see what the lay of land. My little mini tour out to West Central Illinois last week showed some basically some good quality crops, both corn and soybeans, and limited weed situations. But interestingly enough, the pollination was a little later than I thought I'd see when I was driving down the roads to the Mississippi. So right now, the coming week could be some interesting ones, both in the Mideast issues and also as more and more people get a handle on what size crop we have in the U.S. for the 2026 year.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good day.